All right, Shalom. I want to start off by giving our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, where I learned this truth from. And I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. And I'm just going to entitle this lesson, Jacob's Trouble is Here, and with the things that are going on, as in, the recent week, just last week alone with, ICE, taking out, that woman in Minnesota, is leading to, people protesting, which, number 47, wants to enact the Insurrection Act, which, gives him, the right to, declare martial law, which he is going to do, because once martial law is declared, then, he by law, he's not going to, go anywhere. He's going to remain the president. And this is, what we've been talking about. When I say we collectively, starting with, our apostles and elders, the bishops, elder bishops, Great Millstone on down have been talking about, man, like the time of trouble is here, and we can't deny it, man. We're in Jacob's trouble now as we speak, but things are gonna get worse, so it's starting to heat up, but that it's gonna increase more and more, So I'm just gonna bring out a few scriptures. Lord willing, this lesson is edifying and straight to the point, and I'm gonna start with the book of Jeremiah, chapter 30, and verse 6, and it says, "Ask ye now, and see whether a man does travail a child. Wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness." So right, man, we all know that once a woman is in her 9th month, about to deliver a child, she has birth pains, she has contractions. And, the more and more intense those contractions are, the closer she gets to delivering her child, man. And that's how men are going to be during this particular time. They're going to be afraid, as a woman, about to give birth, holding her stomach, and if men are going to be afraid, how much more the women, because again, we're in some very serious times right now, so this is the book of Slakia, not the book, but this is verse 7, Jeremiah 30:7, says, "Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even a time of Jacob's trouble. He should be saved out of it," Slakia, but he should be saved out of it. And right, man, we're in a time of Jacob's trouble, and things are going to increase, man. Incidences like, the one in Minnesota or Minneapolis specifically, things like that are gonna become a common occurrence, where you have these particular agents, just taking people out. And then one thing, brother, or brothers have been mentioning is that, if you think about it, these ICE agents, they aren't, deporting criminals or arresting criminals. They're coming after, regular people, average, everyday, working people, and primarily who, Israelites, right now, they're still, going after Northern Kingdom, just to make sure that, they are American citizens. And then next month, February 3rd, they're going to start deporting Haitians, which, so-called Haitians are the tribe of Levi, and again, how can you distinguish, a Haitian between a so-called Negro or a so-called West Indian, Jamaican, if you will? Because again, the Southern Kingdom, they're all dark skinned, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, how are they going to be able to tell? They're not, man. So Northern Kingdom got it first, But Southern Kingdom is finna get it the worst, you know, because again, a lot of you Negroes, man, y'all was laughing at y'all brethren that was catching hell. Now what? It ain't so funny now, is it, man? Because they're gonna start coming after you, you know, harassing you, pulling you out your car, asking you, you know, where your documents at. You know, are you an American citizen? That's going to become a common thing, you know, which now you might as well say it is a common thing, but it's going to become more and more common, you know, because again, we're getting closer to that time to where martial law is going to be declared. You know, we don't know when exactly or, you know, what particular, you know, incident is going to cause, you know, this man to enact martial law or to declare it, you know, but we do know that again is coming, right? Excuse me, Slakia. And just like it says at the latter part of this verse, he should be saved out of it, and that he is referring to the elect, you know, the elect of the nation of Israel, because they are going to be delivered, you know, through these hard times that, you know, we're in and that, you know, we're approaching. Because again, harder times, you know, are coming, man, because again, it's, you know, shit real right now, but, you know, it's going to get realer. You know, things are going to get more and more intense as time goes on, you know, which is why now, first and foremost, speaking to myself, you know, now is the time to seek the Lord, you know, which I'll grab that in the book of Isaiah, chapter 55 and verse 6. And it says, seek ye the Lord while he may be found, call ye upon him while he is near. And right, man, this is what we're doing, you know, when we do these videos, you know, go out on, you know, the street, you know, to preach, you know, go out on camp, you know, and, you know, with our prayers as well. You know, we're seeking the Lord because we know that the time that we're coming into, we're going to need help. We're going to need some help, man, because again, there's nothing carnally that we can do to come up against Esau, man. It's nothing we can do. You know, this man is too powerful for us. And again, a primary example of that alone is just the incident, you know, in Venezuela, where you had one of the security guards that was interviewed, which these were security guards for Maduro, you know, and they say he had about 400 men, if I'm not mistaken, it's 400 men. And they said 20 soldiers, you know, dropped down from helicopters, you know, and they had like, you know, weapons, you know, not just any weapons, you know, not just any, you know, common, you know, gun, but they had like sound weapons, you know, sound so loud that it would cause them, you know, to vomit, you know, their ears to, I think they said their ears to bleed, nose bleed, something like that. But, you know, just very, very intense sound, you know, weapon, which caused them to come in and take all of these guys out. And it didn't take an entire army to do this. 20 men, you know, took out about 400 men. If I'm not mistaken, it was, you know, at least a couple hundred guys that died, you know, during that raid. But again, things like this are going to become more common. You know, the president of the United States has already declared war against its citizens. You know, so you people that support this man, just understand that his troops are already against you. He's already against you. You know, he doesn't care. You know, and then also this year, you know, July 4th, you know, is going to mark America's 250th year, you know, that has been in power, you know, and we've been saying that 2026 is going to be a very, very interesting year, man. You know, we're not even in February yet, man. It's the beginning of the year and things are heating up. You know, we're seeing things get worse and worse by the day, you know. So I'll jump to 2nd Esdras, chapter 15, and give verse 14. You know what, Slakia? I'll start up. I'm going to grab 2nd Esdras, chapter 15, and verse 5. And it says, Behold, saith the Lord, I will bring plagues upon the world, the sword, famine, death, and destruction. For wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, and their hurtful works are fulfilled. And right, these are the things that the Lord is sending upon the earth, man. Plagues, these different sicknesses, that are going to be out here. The sword, people are going to be unaliving each other. He says famine, there's going to be a famine. There's going to be a lack of food out here because, again, that's still looming. It says death and destruction, man. So there's going to be a lot of death out here. There's going to be a lot of destruction because this place, America, aka Babylon the Great, is going to be destroyed, So now I'm going to jump back to, verse 14, 2nd Ezra 15 and verse 14 says, Woe to them, it's like a woe to the world and them that dwell therein. Says, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. And right, man, America is the most armed nation in the world. There are literally more guns in this country than there are people, which is why there's going to be a lot of shootings that are going to be taking place. The movie Civil War, shows you, just gives you a glimpse, even though they didn't make it, graphic enough, because the things that they showed you, are going to be taking place, man. Troops are going to be out on the streets, man. People are going to be taking each other out, in parts of the U.S. It may not be, just all hell breaking loose. People may just be still living their lives. They're going to know what's going on, but still, they're not going to be, excuse me, it's like it, they're not going to be in these war zones, Verse 16, it says, For there should be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. And right, man, people are eventually going to take matters into their own hands. They're not going to regard what, or they're not going to care what, these different, politicians have to say, these people that are in these particular positions, the mayor, the governor, or even the president himself, they're not going to care, because of the things that are going to be happening. Because again, man, there is going to be a famine. People are going to, be taking each other out because there's a lack of food, and it's no joke. That's going to be one of the primary reasons a lot of people are going to be doing things that they never thought that they would do, because this is going to be real, man. Verse 17, it says, A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. What's that? Martial law. So like right now, how we're still able to freely travel to, the neighboring city, or the next state, but it's not going to be like that. There are going to be military checkpoints set up, in every city, and possibly even, neighborhoods, man. You're going to have troops scattered all over, policing, because once martial law is declared, the military takes over, and that's what number 47 is looking to do, to police the people, have the military police the people because of what? Civil unrest, because the people are angry, these Americans are angry at what's going on here in America, which they should be. Why? Because the dollar is getting weaker. Thus, the cost of everything is increasing. Fuel, food, the cost of living, just everyday necessities that we need, are getting more and more expensive, and that's going to be one of the driving factors that is going to, have these people lose their shit, Verse 18, it says, "For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid." And right, man, men are going to be afraid. And if men are going to be afraid, how much more the women? Because it's going to be a very, very fearful time, man. No one's going to just have nerves of steel, although, the Lord is going to put the spirit on his elect, to be level-headed, man. But still, man, it's going to be a very, very terrible time upon the earth, man. It's going to be fearful because a lot of death is getting ready to take place, man. So if you've never seen, a dead body, it's going to be a lot of that, death everywhere. People aren't going to have time to, bury the dead, as it's going to say in 2nd Ezra 16th chapter, which I'm going to grab that, but I'm going to finish with, verse 19, the 2nd Ezra 15. It says, "A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation." And right, man, the famine is going to cause these people, to go from, once being cool with their neighbor, from being friends to, well, this guy has some food, well, I'm going to go and take what he has, So people are going to be armed, going house to house to steal whatever food, that the next person has, man, because again, the modern day sword is the gun, man, and it's a lot of Americans out here that own them, so this is what people are going to do, once that time comes, excuse me, Salaki, and the brother had me read this earlier. It's the book of 2nd Ezra chapter 16. In verse 17, it says, "Woe was me, who will deliver me in those days?" And right, man, this is Ezra seeing what we're experiencing right now. The time of Jacob's trouble, because he knew that he would be back. He understood reincarnation, and this is what he's asking, what was me? Who's gonna deliver me? Who's gonna save me during these troublesome times, right? Because he's seeing all hell break loose. He's seeing the things that we're getting ready to experience, here in America. Verse 18, it says, "The beginning of sorrows and great mournings, the beginning of famine and great death, the beginning of wars, and the powers shall stand in fear, the beginning of evils. What shall I do when these evils shall come?" And right, man, Ezra is asking, what am I going to do? Which, Ezra is back today. Who he is, where he is, we don't know. But he's back in his lot as a prophet, seeing the things that, he wrote about. He's about to experience it, man. Just like we're experiencing this, it's going to get worse. It's only going to get worse from, here on out, until our Lord Yahweh Shai returns, to deliver us out of here. Right? Verse 19, it says, "Behold, famine and plague, tribulation and anguish are sent for scourges, for amendment." And these are the various things that people are going to be punished with. Famine, whatever particular plague, whatever sickness, because right now you still have this flu going around, so a lot of people are still getting sick, but people are going to be experiencing these things, man. All right, I'm going to jump to verse 22, 2nd Ezra 16 and 22. It says, "For many of them that dwell upon the earth shall perish of famine." So, right, a lot of people are going to starve to death, It says, "And the other that escape the hunger shall the sword destroy." So, right, if somehow, a particular individual, escapes the famine, they don't starve to death, then what? They're going to be put to death by the sword. A lot of people are going to be getting, shot. And it's not a joke, man. Like, that's going to be one of the main ways a lot of people get taken out during, the full-blown Jacob's trouble, because we're in it. But again, It hasn't intensified just yet, you know. But once all hell finally break loose, yeah, that's what's going to be taking place. A lot of shootings are going to take place, you know. There's going to be a lot of dead, bodies out here. We're just going to say right here in verse 23, and it says, and the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall be no man to comfort them. For the earth shall be wasted, and the cities shall be cast down. And right, it's lucky. And again, that's what it's talking about, man. There's going to be so many dead bodies out here that there's not going to be anyone to bury them. They're not going to have time because people are going to be doing, either running, or hiding, during this particular time, because it's no joke, man. It's going to be dead bodies everywhere. This isn't an over exaggeration. It's written, man. That just like you'll see, and it's lucky for the language before I even say it, but just like how you'll see dog shit, on the sidewalk, that's how bodies are gonna be. You see it, you're just gonna have to step over it, man. That's what it's gonna be like during this particular time, and it's gonna be extremely bad, which is why we're gonna need the Lord to save us. So we're gonna get the book of Daniel, chapter 12 and verse 1. It says, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as was never since there was a nation, even to that same time. At that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And right, man, the elect, the 1/3 and 144,000, they're going to be delivered, through these troublesome times that we're in and that are approaching. It's going to be extremely bad out here, but what? Everyone that isn't found written in the book is going to suffer, because it's going to be extremely bad out here, to the point where Michael the archangel is going to have to step in on our behalf to help us. Because we're going to need divine intervention against this man. His weaponry is just on a different level. Warfare has changed from hand-to-hand combat to, these particular weapons that he has, and even ultimately these nuclear missiles that are on the earth, So we're going to need some help, man. This is what, I myself, I pray I'm of the elect. This is why we do what we do, in the hopes that we receive salvation to be delivered from this man and ultimately from the wrath of the Lord, man. This is about to come upon this place. So I'm going to end it with the book of Ephesians chapter 5, and I'm going to start at verse 15. It says, See then that ye walk circumspectly, not as fools, but as wise, redeeming the time, because the days are evil. And right, man, this is what we're doing. We're redeeming the times. And how we redeem the time? By prophecy. And we could clearly see that, Jeremiah 30, verse 6 and 7, if you even want to throw in 5, you can, but we're seeing that prophecy, unfold right before our eyes, man. The time of Jacob's trouble is here. We're in it. And things are going to get more and more intense, again, as time progresses, man, because, again, we're going to see, if this is the year, where all hell finally breaks loose, but we do know that we are in some extremely serious times, man. Extremely serious, and we're going to need the Lord to help us. So, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. I want to give our praise, honor, and glory due to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I'd like to give double honors unto the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, who I learned this truth from, and I'd like to say peace and salutations unto the hopefully elect. Till next time I say, Shalom.